Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Come on. This is
All right.
Listen. I got two little kids at home. I wanted to, we gotta get loud out here, okay? One more time. Come on. The senator's here. We're down here having a good time. Thank you. That's how we do it back in Baltimore. That's how we do. I don't know how. This is our second year at MACo, so I'm trying to revitalize this thing. But thank you guys for coming out this evening. It's been a blessing to be here. It's my second year at MACo. I want to do a couple housekeeping things before we get started, if you don't mind, Ms. Gibbons.
Go for it.
I want to give a shout out to For All Seasons. They're one of my sponsors in the front row. They help mental health and whatnot. They're doing great things on Eastern Shore. Definitely check them out. Zeke's Coffee, that's in Baltimore. They're another sponsor of mine. United Way Central Maryland is another sponsor of mine. They're downstairs. I'm losing Baltimore Peninsula, formerly Port Covington. I'll be doing live shows there all this year, once a month. So please check that out. And WSI Maryland, WSI DMV, and they do Google search and things of that nature to get their websites up. So I need to give them some love before we start. But welcome to the NoPixAfterDark podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Dante. I'm so happy you guys to be here. Mr. U.S. Senator, how are you doing, sir?
Aaron, it's great to be with you, although I feel a little underdressed. I got to get my tux.
I did an article for BMart magazine, and I said, hey, we definitely need to I want to dress up. I want to dress up more. I want to look good. We were in the COVID for 2 years, and come on, we were looking a little.
You're
bummy.
looking very
bummy.
sharp. Absolutely.
I was wearing sweats and hoodies for like 2 years. It was kind of weird. So I wanted 2022, 2023. Let's get dressed up and go out again. Let's look good. So that's why I told your team was coming fresh tonight.
I know. I had to go shopping, but I couldn't find a good tux like yours.
I appreciate you. So let's get started. Tell our audience some things that you're working on right now in the U.S. Senate. What's going on with you guys?
Well, I'm working on a number of things in the United States Senate. The last 2 years, when we had President Biden in the White House and Democrats in majorities in the House and Senate, we passed a lot of good things, and we are working right now to implement this. We just passed the 1-year anniversary of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. There are two big provisions in there that I worked on for years, and glad to have them over the finish line. One of them was to allow people to get a little bit of funding to make their homes more energy efficient. Nice. Because, if you make your home energy efficient, it'll save you a lot of money over a long period of time, but the upfront costs can be considerable. So some people say, I'm not going to do it because I can't afford it at the beginning, even though I'm going to save a lot of money over the long run. So under the Inflation Reduction Act, we have now upfront rebates that people can use for those early costs. We're pushing that out. The prescription drug costs are coming down for people on Medicare. I'm working right now on a bill called the We Paid Bill to bring them down for all Americans. We call it the We Paid Bill because we spend tens of billions of dollars a year as Americans investing in research at places like the National Institutes of Health, which is in Maryland. It's a very important investment for healthcare. But we shouldn't have to pay twice, both as taxpayers on the research and then getting gouged in many cases by some of the bigger pharmaceutical companies. So the We Paid Bill will bring down prescription costs for everybody. So look, there's a whole lot going on. There's also a lot of trouble going on Capitol Hill right now. We can talk about that if you want.
Hey, we're here. We're here.
Well, here we are. So look, I'm very nervous that at the end of this fiscal year, which is the end of September, we could go into another shameful, unnecessary government shutdown. We don't need that as a country. But right now there are a lot of voices, especially in the House of Representatives, that are talking about that. So we're working hard to avoid that. I'm also working on a number of foreign policy issues right now with respect to what's happening in China and in Ukraine. But here at home, we're working on a lot of these pocketbook issues.
Okay, I like a little bit. So you talked about a couple things, but I want to get into the FBI headquarters. Why is that so important for the state of Maryland, and what could that do for our economy going forward?
Look, it's important for the FBI, it's important for the country, it's important for Maryland, right? So the current FBI headquarters in downtown D.C. is falling apart. I mean, literally, the ceilings are collapsing. Everybody agrees that we need a new headquarters for the FBI. The question is where? And Maryland has 2 sites in Prince George's County. And they, number one, will meet the mission of the FBI. And the FBI and the GSA, the General Services Administration, have said they meet the mission. They've come down to 3 sites, 1 in Virginia, Springfield, 2 in Prince George's County, Maryland. All of them meet the mission requirements of the FBI. So why Maryland? Number one, the Maryland sites are a lot less costly to the taxpayer, like by over $1 billion, because the sites in Virginia have existing buildings on them, and it will be costly to the taxpayer to have to move those buildings off in order to build the new FBI headquarters there. Second, President Biden has made a really important statement about the need to make sure we have an all-of-government approach to investing federal taxpayer dollars in a more equitable way, in a way that we build communities that have often been left behind. And if you look at the Washington, D.C. area, counties like Fairfax County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Maryland, have done very well when it comes to new federal office buildings. Prince George's County, now a majority black community, has gotten a lot of warehouses, but they haven't gotten this kind of big national federal office investment. And so as part of our effort to make sure we invest federal dollars in a way to address historical inequities, we need to put the FBI building there. So it's a better deal for the taxpayer, and it also addresses this important priority that the president has laid out, and it meets the mission of the FBI. So that is why the Prince George's County should be the home for the next FBI.
All right, so we're going to keep on that. We're going to keep on that theme. We're going to talk about infrastructure. Let's talk about how Biden has an infrastructure plan, and we're trying to rebuild the red line. We see what's going on with the purple line. We see what's going on with that. But I will give you a quick background story. You don't know this, but I worked on the red line in 2014. I was one of the lucky people who didn't get laid off. I got accepted to do another job to work on the purple line at that point in my career. And when the announcement came back, I was very excited, but cautious and optimistic. We threw away $1 billion. Not we, but the person who was in charge, sending back $1 billion. I think people don't understand, like, that's a lot of money. I don't care how you cut it, but how do you think we can get that trust back in those communities that, again, you know, the highway to nowhere. You talk about infrastructure, talk about these type of things. How do we get, especially African Americans who have lost faith in us as a government, and saying, hey, what are we going to do? So what are your thoughts on infrastructure bill? Will we have a chance to get the money coming back to the States, coming back to Maryland? What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, Aaron, you're absolutely right. It was a huge blow to Maryland and to Baltimore City when our former governor pulled the plug on the red line. The red line planning had been going on for decades. Yes. And the federal delegation, Maryland's federal delegation, had worked together to secure the federal funds, which, as you said, was over $1 billion. And so when Governor Hogan pulled the plug on the red line, he kissed goodbye $1 billion in federal investment, and he really undermined an important opportunity for economic development and opportunity in Baltimore City to bring people together so people could get to and from work more easily, to and from other needs in their daily lives. So when it came time to pass the infrastructure modernization bill just a few years ago under President Biden's leadership, Senator Cardin and I worked very hard to include a number of provisions in that bill to help Maryland and to help Baltimore City. And one of the provisions we added was to say, just because a state had turned back federal dollars for a major transit program at one point in time does not mean that project has to go to the end of the line. It has to be given some sense of priority recognition. It doesn't necessarily go to the very front of the line, but we essentially sent a signal that this would be very important to the state of Maryland. And that's why just a few months ago, I was pleased to join with the governor, our new governor, Wes Moore, who's committed to this resuscitation of the red line, and with Mayor Scott in Baltimore and others. And very importantly, a federal representative from the United States Department of Transportation who was there, as an indication, as a show of solidarity that we want to get moving again on the red line. Now, because of the passage of time, The original route of the Red Line, it will not be identical. But right now, the governor's team, the Maryland Secretary of Transportation, Baltimore City, everyone's now looking to get it back on track, literally. And at the federal level, we're working to make sure that we provide the funds when Maryland decides how it wants to move forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We got to get it moving. Absolutely.
I think a lot of the viewers, listeners from Baltimore region, they really want that. And, I know they're trying to connect from Baltimore County to Baltimore County, possibly Sparrows Point, the area, to Amazon and whatnot. And I think that's very important to get people east of West Baltimore. So thank you for answering that question for us.
Of course.
COVID relief. I know you helped out a lot with that money, with the money for the state of Maryland. Tell people a little bit behind the scenes of what you did behind the scenes to get the money to our partners in all the counties in Maryland.
Well, COVID relief, and thank God we're here, all of us not having to wear our masks and be together. But I think we all remember very well those days, and everything just locked up. And so it was really important that the federal government provided emergency relief to keep the country running, really. And so the relief we provided at the federal level, and I worked very hard as a member of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate to get these funds going, included everything from what we called the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses, so small businesses could survive and, importantly, keep paying their employees. The restaurant bill to keep restaurants at least preventing most of them from going under, and that was a big challenge. But also school systems, transit systems. I mean, think of Baltimore City Transit. Think of in the Washington area, WMATA. Nobody was riding transit systems. They would have all gone under, but for the fact that we provided that emergency help to get us through that period. And the federal government really was the only government entity with the capacity to do that. So a lot of people, argued at the time we should not do what we did, but I'm really glad we did because it did help families get through that very tough period. It helped households, it helped businesses. And now, the economy is doing well, very low unemployment right now. The state of Maryland is down to, 50-year lows, same nationally. We are beginning to tame inflation, which was a big issue, but inflation is coming down. And I think those investments we made, the emergency investments that helped tide people over were critical. Otherwise, we'd be in a very deep hole. So yes, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. I'm glad we got it done. Some of it we got done on a bipartisan basis. For a couple years, we had a lot of bipartisan support for that. The most recent bill, which was called the American Rescue Plan, which we passed just a few months after President Biden came to office, that was Democrats only. We wanted to get Republican support for that, but we didn't. But nevertheless, we passed it, and so I'm glad we did. So we provided the emergency relief, and now we've been working on these other measures, like the infrastructure bill, like what we call the CHIPS and Science bill, to bring back more American manufacturing in high-tech areas, to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, big investments in clean energy. So there's a lot of good going on. We just need to keep it going.
Thank you. So this is a controversial question. You and I talked about this a little bit. A lot of my listeners, they want term limits for senators because a lot of them feel like they're there too long. You can tell your answer, but go ahead.
Well, no, look, term limits are a hotly debated issue. My view has been let the voters decide. I mean, voters get to go to the ballot box. We need to make sure that we have, easy access to the ballot box. We need to make sure that those states that are trying to put up barriers to people voting can't get away with it. So we need to make it easy for people to vote. But my view is that they should cast the decision. So if you're an opponent of somebody who's been in the House or Senate or mayor or whatever it may be, you should make your argument as to why they should be replaced. And whoever's been an incumbent should say, well, here's what I've been doing, and I've been trying to do my best, whatever it may be. So I guess my bottom line is you shouldn't have an artificial time limit. That's not to say that, and I'm not thinking of any particular person, that's not to say that, let me just put it this way. Speaking
There's
for
some-
myself,
there's some people need to go.
Speaking for myself, I don't. You know, I hope God may I live to 100. But I tell you, if I'm 100, I will not be in the United States
No,
Senate anymore.
listen. We're not going to wheel you out. We're not going to name names, but it's just to the point where Americans are tired of it. We're tired of looking at that, and it's like, why are they there? Like, come on. Like, and power is a nasty drug, and that's what I've seen through Congress and Senate. It's just a nasty drug, and people just don't want to give it up.
Yeah,
Let's be
I
honest here,
don't think people should run just because they've been there. That's not a reason to run. I think people need to get up every morning, be excited about what they're doing, and when that's no longer true, they should hang it up. And as I said, I mean, there are people who do stay a very long time, and I don't intend to be one of them.
Going forward, just on some things, do you think the Constitution's outdated right now? Do you think we should revise it? Should it be revised?
Well, I think I do support an amendment to the Constitution on the question of this unlimited amount of money that can be spent in elections. I think that is undemocratic, small d. So you may all remember the Citizens United case from a number of years back. It was a terrible decision. It was a 5-4 decision. And what the Supreme Court decided in that case was that corporations and entities that are called 501c4s can spend an unlimited amount of money trying to elect or defeat a candidate, and that it was their constitutional right to do so. They equated speech entirely with dollars, and my view is that that was an incorrect reading of the Constitution of the United States, but that has been their ruling. So we only have two ways to reverse it. One is you'd have to have a future Supreme Court overturn Citizens United. That's not going to happen with this Supreme Court.
Not gonna happen with that.
The alternative is a constitutional amendment, which is also a very laborious process. But I am a sponsor of legislation to make that a constitutional amendment. I will say one other thing, Aaron, on terms of the Constitution and the filibuster in the Senate. Right. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. So the filibuster is this provision that allows senators to talk and talk and talk. And I'm for allowing people to debate at length. I want to be clear about that. But in the Senate, in order to stop people from talking and talking and talking, you don't need 51 out of 100 votes, which would be a majority. You need 60 out of 100 votes. And so my colleagues can literally not even show up. And if we can't put 60 votes on the board, then the folks who are opposing whatever it may be, like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, like the George Floyd Justice Policing Act, whoever's opposing it, they don't even have to show up and debate. We need to put 60 out of 100 votes on the board, a supermajority. That is not a provision in the Constitution, and it's anti-democratic, small d, and we should get rid of it. And I raised it in the context of the Constitution because the Constitution already has a provision that creates a undemocratic tilt in the United States Senate. And the reason I say that is that the state of Wyoming, with about 500,000 people, has 2 senators in the United States Senate. The state of California, with tens of millions of people, has 2 senators in the United States Senate. So if you think about it, the voting power per person of that Wyoming senator is already disproportionate to the voting power per person of the senator from California. So less populated states already have disproportionate power in the Constitution. My view is this supermajority requirement on the filibuster compounds that already undemocratic tilt. And so we need to get rid of this supermajority filibuster requirement. It is blocking the will of the American people in all sorts of areas, including most recently in our ability to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We can get into this in a little more detail. Let me make this other point. There are ways around the 60 vote requirement for certain kinds of legislation. So if you can connect something to the budget, then you can use this process called reconciliation, where you only need 51 votes to pass something. So when it comes to passing tax cuts, you cannot use that 60-vote blocking mechanism. When it comes to some things that I support, like the Affordable Care Act, you can also, and we did, use reconciliation. But it makes no sense to have a certain category of legislation where you can pass it with 51 votes in the Senate, and then have other legislation like protecting voting rights and not be able to use that because it's not connected to the budget, right? So it is a crazy provision that we've got in the Senate rules. They were put there by senators. They should be gotten rid of by senators by a vote, and we should vote to do that.
All right, so that, get a little bit lighter. We're going to get a little lighter
so
now.
yeah,
I know, we
all
can
right.
go all day. When I say blue catfish to you.
I was telling Aaron, so Senator Cardin and I just came from a hearing in Berlin, the town of Berlin here on the Eastern Shore. So one of the big issues in Maryland right now is blue catfish. So it's an invasive species. Our friends to the south in Virginia, somebody introduced these years ago. Here's the thing about blue catfish. They love to eat crabs, baby crab. And so they're like decimating the Maryland, the Chesapeake blue crab. And so we got to catch a lot more blue catfish, and we need to eat a lot more blue catfish. And actually, this has gotten to be quite a legislative battle because there are folks from the state of Mississippi and Louisiana where they have farmed catfish that are trying to make it more difficult for others to sell and eat catfish. Anyway, I was telling Aaron I know now a lot about catfish. And a long time ago when I was in college, for 2 summers, I had a roommate in college from the state of Washington, Bellingham, Washington. And so to make money in the summers, we went up to Alaska. And I worked on what was called the slime line. I worked in a fish processing plant where they would bring in the salmon, and the salmon would there, and you slit them. Then the next it's a conveyor belt. First person slips them, guts them. So I was thinking during this hearing about my days on the slime line in Alaska. I did work my way up to first the Iceman, where you ice it, and then I graded salmon. If you want to know about salmon, red salmon, silver salmon, dog salmon, dogfish, anyway, and then forklift driver. So I got off the slime line. But all those memories were coming back a little bit earlier
But you know
today.
what? When next time you come to Baltimore, we got to have somebody on your staff to get you some fish and grits, some catfish and grits. That's what we got to get you. Catfish and grits. Got to.
Well,
my man in the South, you know what I'm talking about from Alabama. You know what I'm talking about.
But I just want you to know, and this is the point we're making, Maryland blue catfish are a lot better than those southern catfish. And these are wild swimming catfish. And in the South, you got a lot of farmed catfish. So you didn't know you'd be treated to a special seminar on catfish, but
Not today.
that's.
What do you look forward to when you come to MACo, when you come to this conference?
You look around this room. I see a lot of folks I've worked with for a long period of time that you don't see every day. And what MACo does is it brings people together who are forming partnerships. The focus, of course, is on the local county governments, right? Maryland Association of Counties. But a lot of us come down here, whether we're the federal level, the state level, the county level, or the municipal level, because we learn from each other. We share stories, and we learn what works in one place, like Baltimore City, and you can take that idea to other parts of the state of Maryland. So it's a little bit of that, and it's also just a good time to see a lot of people who, at least during the COVID, you didn't see or you saw on the other end of the Zoom. So I enjoy coming down to MACo. I don't make it every year. They also have a great crab fest at the end of it.
Yeah, are you going to be here for the crab feast or not?
I'm not sure I'm going to make it this year, but I do love my Maryland crabs.
All right, so you led into my last question. That was a good one. That was like how you led into my last question.
Oh, I did?
You did.
Okay. All right.
So we do a quick speed round to end on the show, and it's a fun kind of getting a little bit of your personality. All right, so we're gonna start with chicken wings. I'm a chicken wing guy. Flats or drums?
Flats.
All right, we are now.
You good on? Is that you?
We are
I
now.
haven't.
I'm
I
a
didn't know
fly
you.
guy, man.
I didn't get any inside information on that.
Good,
I really
okay,
didn't.
okay. Honey
What do you
Old-
dip it? Huh?
What? Honey Old Bay or regular barbecue sauce?
On my
On your
wings.
yeah. Honey Old Bay flavored or barbecue sauce?
Blue cheese.
But the flavor though.
Oh.
If it's a buffalo flavor or a honey Old Bay.
I would take honey.
Okay, honey Old Bay. So then blue cheese or ranch.
Blue cheese.
All right, you're good with me because I don't like ranch. Ranch is like for French fries. That's it.
Huh? Yeah. Well, ranch depends on what it's on, but not on wings. Yeah. So I'm glad we're on the same page.
There we go.
Flats and blue cheese.
Snowballs or ice cream? This is controversial.
No. Look. My dad's from Baltimore City. Grew up in Baltimore City, so Charm City. I'm on snowballs. I got it.
Egg custard?
But I can tell you who
okay.
likes my deputy chief of staff,
See?
Terry. She loves the egg custard stuff. Yeah.
I like that. Crabs or crab cakes?
Crabs are great, but they take a lot of work pounding that hammer. So I'll go for crab cakes.
Okay, all right. So I'll let you slide on that. I like crab because this world we live in, everybody's on their cell phone. And you and I know you're not going to pick up your Old Bay, touching your cell phone, and sting your eye. So I kind of want that community of talking again. I like the conversation. Crabs and beers, the conversation. Crab cake, you can be on your phone eating and not paying attention. But with the crabs, you're sitting there having that conversation. That's what we're missing.
Well, just give me I'll take care of that. Give me your phone.
But if you come to Baltimore, and this is a shameless plug, I live in Northeast Baltimore, you got to come to Coco's, the best crab cake in Baltimore City.
All right, Coco's, okay. And I will leave my phone at the desk so that even if I get crab cakes.
Let's do it next time you come in town.
We'll do it.
Spring or summer? What's your favorite season?
Spring or summer?
Yeah.
I'll take spring over summer, especially these days. I mean, it's just getting so hot. But look, I love the seasons. That's why I like Maryland. But, I'm not going to do the politicians thing and say I like all 4 seasons. So I'll take spring.
And then the last question. If you could see any 2 bands in the world, dead or alive, group, you could see them, who would you see? You're a musician.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would see, I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan, so I would see Rolling Stones. Can you, dead or alive?
Dead or alive. See, I went to Voodoo Lounge tour, actually.
Okay.
With my dad.
Can I bring back Prince?
Oh, now we're talking now. Now
Okay.
we're talking. Okay.
All right.
So-
But look, I love all sorts of music. That's the problem. I get my, I listen to my earphones, my earbuds, whatever you call them, and so I just do a lot of flipping to different channels. But I would. Those are 2 great bands. I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan. Look, I like all sorts of music. So.
And make sure we add on your playlist NoPixAfterDark podcast while you're working out. So let's make sure we add that to the playlist.
I will. Okay.
Make sure we add that.
We will do that.
On
We will
Spotify,
do that.
we can get to everything. But thank you again so much for your time. It's been an honor to speak with you and just sit down and chat, just have a relationship, honest, friendly conversation.
This goes way too fast.
It does.
Okay.
But what we're going to do next is I want to also shout out to MACo Kevin over there. He's the one who came up with the idea, said let's do something really big this year. And I really appreciate him trusting me, saying